Well, hello and greetings from Bali, Indonesia. It's about 8 o'clock at night here, so I'm sitting in my villa, and I've been asked by Michelle to talk a little bit about myself in terms of photography, and to answer a few questions that I've got here, and also show you a few images over the next sort of 15 to 20 minutes that we'll show you some of my photography, and I'll go through and explain in terms of storytelling and what I'm trying to do with my photography, and maybe give a few tips and things like that. So I hope you enjoy this next 15 or 20 minutes. So just first of all, tell you a little bit about myself. I've been living here in Bali for about 9 years, and I've been a professional photographer since that time. And the main thing I do with my photography is I teach people, and I organize photography tours to around Bali, around Indonesia, and to other parts of the world, such as Japan, United States, Alaska, Southwest, Eastern Sierra, for example, other countries like Vietnam, India, Myanmar, and also, as I mentioned, different parts of Indonesia. So sometimes these are pure photography tours, and sometimes I call them photography cultural tours. So they're also for people that aren't necessarily photographers, but have an interest in cultures. And of course, Indonesia is an amazing country with so many different tribes and so many indigenous cultures, and you'll see some photos of those soon. So I've been doing photography since I was 9 years old, back in the film days when I first went to Australia from New Zealand. My father took me over there for a holiday, and I took photos way back then. So I've always been a very keen photographer since that time as a hobby. And I was working for UPS in the corporate world for about 20 years, and was always taking photographs though whenever I traveled. And I've always been a pretty fanatic traveler, having traveled all over the world to many, many countries, lived in America and Canada, so I've always had a camera in my hand whenever I travel, and I've always been inspired to get out and take photographs and connect with the people. And so that's what I've been doing most of my life. And then I decided to get out of the corporate world and do something professionally with photography. So I sort of found my way into Bali, and I've absolutely loved it. And outside COVID, during normal times, I do about 7 or 8 tours a year. And as I say, I do, day trips around Bali into the villages and into the beautiful landscapes and places like that. So just to answer a few of these questions, what inspires me to photograph? Well, the thing I love about photography, first of all, it gets me up early in the morning. I don't like getting up too early normally. I'd rather sleep in, but I realize to get the best light, especially in Asia and especially in Bali, I've got to be up at 5:30 and out there chasing the light. So I'm always chasing light, actually. So that's a big inspiration for me, this beautiful early morning light you get down in this part of the world. It's really quite addictive, actually. So I love to get out there and photograph people and landscapes and really, really capture that beautiful light. And also what inspires me is to tell stories, to communicate to people about different cultures and different countries, and educate through my photography. I'm also inspired to use photography to give back, and I do a lot of that in terms of supporting communities in all kinds of different ways and communicating messages about those communities, whether the situation is bad or good, or it's more about the beauty of the forest, or it's to document the destruction of the rainforest with palm oil and logging and mining and things like that. So that's a big inspiration for me. What stories do you wish to tell? Well, I like to tell human stories. I like to paint a picture and let people make up their own minds. But I like to tell stories that are true, that are real. That's why I really like connecting with Indigenous people in the communities, because these people are very real and they're faced with all kinds of challenges, but they're also very beautiful, and they treat you like family, and they've always treated me with tremendous respect wherever I've traveled. So those are the sorts of stories about these people, their history, their culture, where they live, how they live. I try and communicate those kind of stories. I love to do street photography. I've done quite a lot of that in India. And I love to tell those stories about life on the streets for people. I've done that quite a bit in Jakarta as well. So I get very inspired by these people's lives and the reality of how difficult it is, but yet they often have a smile on their face and a great attitude. And I think in the Western cultures, we're very privileged. And so I like to remind people of that by communicating the reality of life in some of these places. And often in these big cities, it's all about survival. So I like to tell those kind of stories as well. How do I approach an image, from lighting to composition to working with the subject? Well, that's a good question. And I think composition is critical. And I'll show you some photos soon that will communicate that, how just a slightly different angle can make an enormous amount of difference in the photo and what you're trying to communicate with the audience. Lighting, well, as I mentioned before, that's critical. And I think I'm always looking not only for the right light, but also the subjects. So quite often I'll be on my motorbike or bicycle or walking in the rice fields, and I'll see an image, I'll see the light, and then I look for a subject. And sometimes I'm lucky, sometimes I'm not. But if I've got the right light and I just need a subject to walk into that light, which is pretty easy in Bali, because when you're out in the rural areas, out in the rice fields and in the landscapes, there's lots of people around, farmers and people making offerings and carrying things on their head and things like that. So more than likely somebody is going to walk into your photo at some point. Sometimes I might have models. I might do a little bit of setup. I generally don't like to do that, but sometimes I realize to really get the kind of shot that I want, that's what I need to do. But that's having to be creative as well. The color combination, the people in the right light and the right angles and the composition. So those all come into play. But I love photographing ceremonies, and I'll show you some of those in a minute as well. So there's many, many ceremonies in Bali. Normally, outside COVID, there's ceremonies every other day. And they're really fascinating places because there's lots going on there. The Balinese are very happy. They're praying to the gods. They're making offerings. They're really embracing and indulging in their culture and their faith. So it's a wonderful opportunity to try and capture some of that. What are the stories behind some of the photos? So I'll show you those in a minute. And the other question was, what advice do I have to give aspiring photographers? Well, I think the most important thing, and I know I've learned this from other photographers I admire, is be yourself. Photograph what you love. Don't try and photograph what other people like or what other people influence you to photograph. Get out there and forge your own path. Be creative. Don't get caught up too much in the technical stuff. I notice a lot of photographers that come on my tours will speak for a half an hour about the latest camera and what a beautiful lens and all this kind of stuff. But these are just tools. These are like paintbrushes. The key is to be creative and to put your heart and your soul and your spirit into the subject and whatever it is you want to communicate with the audience or with the people. So I think that's really important. And feel for the subject, whether that's landscapes, whether that's people, whether it's, just basic life going on in the streets. Get a feeling, take your time. Don't just walk in there with a camera and start shooting. I often spend half an hour or an hour in a place, in a marketplace or in a ceremony or whatever, in a village. At least, if I have the time, obviously try and create as much time as you can, because that's when your creativity starts to come in. Just observe, feel it, talk with the people, connect with the people, get comfortable, get your mind into the right space. Then start to think about the type of images that you want to create. I mean, typically if I go out 3 or 4 days and I'm photographing, taking thousands of images, I might come up with 10 or 15 really, really good ones that I'm happy with. So it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And it's about thinking. So that's what I would say. That's very important. Let's look at some images. Okay, so the first image I want to show is a woman in a village in Kalimantan. And this is, I always like to capture these indigenous people doing what they do every day. So this lady was a basket weaver. So I was very interested to capture, obviously, the basket as not not as a subject. I wanted her as a subject. So you notice that I've focused on her, and the basket is a little bit out of focus. So I want the eye to concentrate on her. And the light, I like to use natural light as much as possible. This is the same lady, and I like to create a sense of space. So I could have taken a photograph of her sitting in the middle of the frame, but I put her on the side. So she's looking out into space. It gives a much more effective technique, I think. Again, portraits using natural light. This lady was standing in a doorway with a black background, so this accentuates the face. So for portrait photography, that's what I like to do. I don't use flash, I just use natural light. I like this photo of this young girl because her shirt says for you with a love heart. And I asked her to hold that flower. So this is a Dayak, an indigenous young lady from a small village up in Borneo. And there she is standing there with the beautiful flower. So much color, the words on her shirt, and of course the forest of Borneo in the background. So I like that shot. This was photographing a fishing village, one of the busiest fishing villages in Indonesia. I'll just go through these quickly, but here again, when I walk into a place like this, I like to be able to capture it from different angles, capture different people, capture the spirit and the noise and the whatever else is going on in the place, and you know, through the eyes of the people and what they're doing. So this lady's holding up fish, but again, I focus on her face, not the fish. Quite like this. Here's a lady sitting there with a baby. I quite like the motorbike as well because that's her means of transport. This was all in this fishing village, the guy with the baskets. I like to frame, use other sort of, shot inside a sort of a cabin to frame, in this case, the fishing boats, just something a little bit different. I like the expression on this man's face. Again, I did take one of him looking directly at me, but I quite like that looking away. Again, I like to do an overall view of this hundreds of these fishing boats, very colorful, and then get a bit more into the detail, what these ladies are doing with their fishing. And here I've focused in on this lady in the front on the left. So I want the eye to go there, and I blurred out a bit of the background. I like to get in close in this situation with a wide angle lens. I take most of my shots in this type of environment with a wide angle, and I like to get close to the action. I like to use the sun. I like to use some silhouettes, and I'll show you some more of those in a minute. Use black and white sometimes. I don't use color all the time. There's a lot of action going on. Here's the guy putting up the peace sign. Quite like this shot. The guy on the left here has got his face covered by a t-shirt as he comes out of the water with all the fish. These barrels of fish are very, very heavy as well. These guys are really sweating. Again, different angles, getting above, shooting down the ladies with the fish that they're trading. So that's just a few photos from that particular fish market scene. Silhouettes I love. So this is in an island called Lembongan, which is near Bali, and I spent quite a few hours here, and particularly on dusk, on sunset. And I wanted to get these silhouettes of these guys coming in with the fish in their basket. So I spent quite a bit of time working on different angles and trying to get them against the sky. Here's another one which I think is quite effective as well. The shape of the guy with the baskets. This guy here, as the sun was setting, that was a little bit before, but again, nice shapes and the big stick that he's got. Also, I was waiting for a beautiful sunset, and I got it. So I love this. I was kind of waiting for the sun to come down close to the horizon, and it was perfect the way it formed. And of course, I wanted to get a subject in the foreground. So again, I was lucky that these fishermen were there. Well, not lucky, because I anticipated this. So I set myself up hoping for the sunset, which came with the fishermen in the foreground. Just to emphasize, this was taken during the day. Here you got a bright white sky. Again, a wide angle lens getting in quite close, focusing on him against the white sky. So totally different effect, some dark silhouettes here in the middle of the day, but equally as effective. This is a ceremony in Bali that I went to recently, and I just took a few photos to emphasize what I was trying to do here. Quite like this with the sun coming through and the offerings that they had in front of the priests. Again, a wide angle lens getting down low as the musicians were walking through in a procession. This is a manku or a pimanku, a high priest, and you can see his incredible gold hat and a lot of the elements that are around him. So here's a shot that I took focusing on him, and so the foreground's blurred out, but there's quite a lot in this picture. If you look on the left, this priest has got a bell. Here's the flowers, but they're all blurred out. I want to get in on his face here. And another shot I took was quite different. I focused in on this area, on these prayer items, and left him blurred in the background. So these are just different options to think of when you're taking a photo in a situation like this. Don't just all take one shot, one dimensional by focusing on the priest. No, take in a lot more of what's around you. This one I did slightly different skin contrast. And this is a female high priest. And again, I'm focusing in on her and the look on her face. I really like that shot. We have people carrying offerings, getting in quite close to the action. Here's another one of the priests focusing it again, getting the point of focus on his face with all of the things that he's using around him. Jump to this one is this is landscape. So here's just 3 or 4 or 5 shots in the same place, different angles, different composition. Look at the amazing clouds here. You got a lot here. You got reflections, you got trees, you got the volcano in the distance. You got a bit of mist and a scattering of trees in the center. So that's one photo. I like that one, but also I moved around and then I took this shot with a wide angle lens with the tree more in the center, but composing around with the foreground here that gives a bit of color and leads into this landscape scene. Here's another one with the tree on the left side. And we've got some lovely lines here on the right side of the picture, which flow beautifully through the water. And so the emphasis here is not on the volcano or the cloud so much, it's more on the lines and the tree. Here's a black and white, very different effect again. And here's another one moving around to my right by a few meters and focusing more on the volcano and the reflection and the tree on the right and the cloud. So yeah, I took those just to emphasize to you the different ways in which you can do landscape photography. This is, I like to take photos of Indigenous people in the villages, in the communities, set them up in their homes and using natural light. They feel more relaxed. I ask them just to be themselves. I talk to them for a while, get them relaxed, and then I start shooting. I like to particularly put people against the natural elements. Here's an Indigenous person standing on a rock, looking up into this beautiful original rainforest up in Borneo. So I don't want to put him in the center of the frame. I want to put him out on the right side, looking up to his forest that he's very connected with and absolutely adores. I think this is quite effective storytelling. Man in his forest. This is dance photography. So here I've used a special lens, a lens baby, where I've blurred out the foreground and just focus on the dancer's face. And also I like the hands that are in behind here. So we've got a lot of hand movement. So the hair's blurred and here's more in focus. And here's the face. Again, quite an effective way of taking a photo of dancers. Again, the lens baby in action, focusing on the subject, blurring out the foreground. Beautiful colors, nice composition. Again, I've framed this around some flower, some green flower there on the left to emphasize and focus in on the dancer's face. And this one I've gone in close and I've used a shallow depth of field, but enough depth of field that I've got the face on the right, not in focus, because I don't want the eye to go there. I want the eye to focus in on this, obviously the subject, which is this dancer and her eyes. And I like her eyes are looking to the left. And the lady on the right, the eyes are more looking towards her. Again, using layers, a very effective use of photography. That's a very interesting photo. These are shots of Japan and a geisha lady shot inside using natural light, using different kinds of styles. Let's run through these quickly. Focusing in a bit more detail away from the face, leaving the face out in this case and focusing more on the color and what she's wearing. Here's nice natural light coming in through the window and placing her in that position and asking her to look towards the natural light. And this one, she danced. And again, it has to be Japan, right? And you got the background, and I like the light on her face. So different ways in which you can photograph dancers, or in this case, a model. This is a bamboo forest with beautiful leading lines, a picture you can't help but be admire. This is interesting because this is just a statue, and I did take one just of the statue, but I decided to, with this one, again, leave another layer in there, another statue on the right. So the eye goes directly to the subject in the middle, but bringing in the other statue on the right just adds a little bit more to this photograph. That's what I was trying to do. Again, leaving out, what you leave out is just as important sometimes as what you leave in. And this is obviously in Japan, and a girl who was dressed up and focusing more on the feet, quite effective use. Now these last few I just wanted to show you. So this is the same place at the same time. It's a beautiful building in Japan on this lake. And these are just different ways that I photographed it. You look at the color here in the foreground. Beautiful, right? But then when I move my angle over to the bridge, and here I look at a wide angle lens and using reasonably long depth of field, so I get the foreground in focus and the background, and it flows nicely. And I like the color contrast, the red with the color of the building. Here's another one composing around trees or leaves, which I like to do, which gives another effect. And then it's a totally different angle with a wide angle lens from this side. So yeah, so I hope I've given you a good background there. I've probably talked for a bit longer than I wanted to, but I hope you've learned something from this. And yeah, so look, as I say, I really hope you enjoyed this. And I really hope whoever's watching this, that you do come and visit us in Bali one day. It's a very, very beautiful place, and obviously you can't travel at the moment, but maybe next year. And look me up if you're interested in come on any of my photo tours, or just want me to show you a little bit of Bali if you make your way down this way, or if you want to go to Alaska. As I say, I come over Norway, once a year. So yeah, so I'm sure Michelle can pass on my details, but I hope you all get out there and photograph as much as you possibly can, and put your time and effort into this wonderful pursuit, because I think one of the wonderful things about photography is it really forces you to look at the detail of things, to really embrace the world and the planet and the diversity of people and all the wonderful travel opportunities. And it's a great incentive. I often say that the camera takes me into places. I just pick it up and it leads me into all these wonderful places. So it's a fantastic thing to do, photography, whether it's a professional, whether it's just for fun or it's a hobby. Please keep it up, and good luck.